Welcome to today's video on complex numbers, talking about the imaginary unit. And the imaginary unit is I. And remember, I is equal to the square root of -1 because it helps us to solve the question x squared plus 1 equals 0, because x squared equals -1 is not solvable in the real number system, but it is in the imaginary because it would be plus or minus I. A complex number has a real part and a imaginary part. So a complex number can be written in the form a plus bi, where a is the real part and bi is the imaginary part. So an example of that would be like 3 plus 5i. Notice the real part first, the imaginary part second. Adding and subtracting complex numbers, remember, you're going to combine like terms. So 11 plus 2i. Now in this one, you're going to distribute first. So you get 2 minus I minus 8 minus 3i. And then when you combine like terms, you get -6 minus 4i. Now the imaginary unit I, if you square it, that would equal -1, because remember, if you square a square root, you just remove the square root sign. I to the third is equal to I squared times I, which is -1 times I, which is -I. I to the fourth is the same as I squared times I squared, which is -1 times -1, which is 1. Now if I went I to the fifth, notice that gets me right back to I. I to the sixth, notice that gives me -1, or I squared. I to the seventh gives me -I, or I to the third, and I to the eighth gets me back to 1. So notice after every power of 4, it just repeats itself, which means if I wanted to find I to the 107th, what I would do is I'd divide by 4, the power 107. In this case, it gives me 26 with a remainder of 3. I look at the remainder. If the remainder is 1, it's the same as I. 2 is the same as I squared. 3 is the same as I to the third. 0 is the same as I to the fourth. So in this case, since the remainder is 3, that I to the 107th is the same as I to the third, which is equal to -I. Alright. Multiplying complex numbers. First, you want to simplify. So the square root of -4 is 2i plus I times 6 minus 5i. So 2i plus I is 3i. And then it's 18i minus 15i squared. Remember, I squared is equal to -1, so it's 18i minus 15 times -1, which is 18i plus 15. But then remember, standard form, you write the real part first. So it's 15 plus 18i. We're going to skip this part of the video and go right to complex conjugates and division. Remember, when you divide by a radical, that you want to rationalize the denominator. To do this here, you would just multiply top and bottom by an I. So you get 2i plus I squared over 3i squared. Notice that gives me negative 1 plus 2i, because this becomes negative 1. And 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. So that would be your final answer there. It's not as simple when you have an expression. When you have an expression, you need to multiply by the complex conjugate. If it's a plus bi, the complex conjugate is a minus bi. Because remember, when you FOIL conjugates, the i's will go away. So you get a squared minus abi here plus abi minus b squared I squared. So notice the middle term goes away. You put in the negative 1 for I squared, and you have a squared plus b squared. So if you multiply by the conjugates, you get 2i plus I squared over 4 minus I squared, because remember the middle terms are going to cancel out. So it's negative 1 plus 2i when you substitute in for the I squared, and then this is 5. Alright, last, using the complex numbers to solve a quadratic equation. So we're going to do the quadratic formula. A equals 3, b equals 1, c equals 2. So negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So it's negative 1 plus or minus, so you have 1 minus 24, which is the square root of negative 23, all over 6. And the square root of negative 23 becomes I rad 23. And that is your final answer. Here you want to combine like terms. So you have x squared minus 4x plus 19 equals 0. So now you have a equals 1, b equals negative 4, and c equals 19. So you have the opposite of negative 4 plus or minus the square root of negative 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times 19 all over 2a. (16 minus 76 all over 2). Negative 60. And then simplifying the square root of 60, remember 60 is 2 times 2 times 15. So it's going to be plus or minus 2i rad 15 all over 2. And then you can simplify, because they're all divisible, by 2, so it becomes 2, 1, 1. So it's 2 plus or minus I rad 15. Final answer. Alright, I hope this helps, and if you have any further questions, please feel free to ask in class. Have a good night.